All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into it. We're going to try and uncover some truly pressing global events.
Yeah, it's a lot happening.
We'll be untangling the latest developments from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, then taking a fascinating and maybe sometimes alarming look at the cutting edge of military technology.
Right.
And finally, something quite different will uncover a surprising, very human element in a long-standing conflict in Turkey.
So our mission for you today really is to cut through all the noise. We want to pull out the crucial insights from these stories,
Connect the dots.
Exactly. Connect the dots across these events that might seem separate but are actually deeply relevant globally, and hopefully leave you with those satisfying aha moments that make this stuff really stick.
Okay, let's dive straight in then, starting with the immediate sort of on-the-ground reality of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. It just keeps evolving daily, doesn't it?
Constantly.
So recently, we've seen significant Russian activity, particularly around Kostiantynivka. There was a devastating artillery attack there.
Yeah, I saw the reports.
Pretty bad. Local authorities are saying at least 3 people killed, 4 injured. And the attack involved 8 rocket launchers. They specifically targeted a local market.
A market. Terrible.
And get this, Russian forces also launched 10 glide bombs on the city.
Glide bombs. So basically smart bombs launched from a distance.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Standard bombs with wings and guidance makes them really hard to intercept.
Right.
And the regional governor, Vadim Falashkin, he's been appealing for residents to evacuate. Apparently, Russian forces are now approaching from 3 different sides.
Closing in. And Kostiantynivka has always been a key spot, hasn't it? Like a fundamental logistical hub for the Ukrainians.
Exactly, which makes this focus pretty significant.
Yeah, and what's truly insightful here, I think, is how this focus on logistical hubs like Kostiantynivka reveals a strategic shift by Russia.
How so?
Well, it seems like they've moved away from those earlier, maybe faster assaults to a more, attritional war footing.
Right, grinding it out.
Exactly. It signals maybe a long-term intent to make these gains permanent. It forces Ukraine into this really draining defensive posture instead of going for quick wins. It's a different kind of strategy than we saw earlier. And using glide bombs, well, that just underscores their desire for precision, but also destruction from a safer distance.
Okay, and beyond Kostiantynivka, Russia's also claiming advances elsewhere. And the Dnipropetrovsk region, they're specifically saying they've taken the village of Novohorivka.
Okay.
And according to Deep State, that Ukrainian mapping project that tracks frontline changes in near real time.
Yeah, I follow them.
Well, they showed Russian troops were already within like 1 or 2 kilometers of that city.
So it was close already.
Seems like it. Plus, Russia claims they hit port infrastructure used for fuel supply and a drone assembly factory, though they didn't say which port.
Vague on the details there.
And they also stated they captured 2 other settlements, Pankivka and Sukesk, in eastern Ukraine. So how do we interpret these claims, especially since Ukraine often stays quiet, right?
Yeah, you're right to point that out. The Ukrainian army, well, typically, they rarely comment publicly on these specific Russian claims about territory.
Operational security, I guess.
Probably. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, while Russia's making these ground claims, Ukraine's strategy often involves hitting back deeper into Russian territory. Using drones, other munitions to create pressure and disruption. That's where we see their countermoves.
Right. And speaking of those counteractions, Ukraine has continued striking inside Russia, particularly Belgorod region, it seems.
Yeah, that area sees a lot of activity.
Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov reported something like 100 drones and 33 other munitions launched by Ukraine in just 24 hours.
Wow, 100 drones. That's significant.
Yeah, he detailed that several settlements were attacked by 10 drones, though he said 4 were shot down. So it's definitely very active back and forth, isn't it?
Absolutely. It just highlights how multifaceted this whole conflict is. Russia pushes for these incremental gains on the ground.
Meter by meter sometimes.
Right. And at the same time, Ukraine is applying pressure behind their lines, which, creates a really difficult calculation for Moscow. They have to divert resources to defend their own turf, and that logically impacts their offensive punch in Ukraine.
Okay. Let's shift gears slightly away from the immediate battlefield to the diplomatic chess match happening behind the scenes.
The security guarantees talk.
Exactly. It seems Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, is let's say, quite uncomfortable with the discussions happening in Europe and the U.S. about security guarantees for Ukraine.
Oh, definitely. Lavrov's stance is pretty unequivocal. He basically believes security guarantees cannot be discussed without Russia's participation. Full stop.
Right.
He even said, quite bluntly, that discussing it seriously without Russia is a path to nowhere.
Strong words.
Very. And he actually suggested a potential format. The UN Security Council permanent member, so Russia, China, US, France, UK, plus maybe Germany and Turkey. They could provide equal security guarantees. But his main point, his insistence, is on Moscow having a central role. He even referenced the talks back in Istanbul in 2022.
So Russia wants to be seen as indispensable, even now.
Absolutely. It really highlights their desire to remain a key global player, even while facing sanctions and isolation. They want a seat at that table.
Okay, but meanwhile, European leaders are pushing ahead, right? Accelerating their own negotiations on a security package for Ukraine should there be a ceasefire.
They are. And Zelensky, he's consistently demanding binding guarantees, something solid to prevent future invasion.
And French President Macron weighed in.
Yeah, Emmanuel Macron's view is interesting. He said these guarantees wouldn't mean NATO membership, not necessarily.
Okay.
But they would depend on a strong Ukrainian army, which would be supported by commitments from what he called a coalition of wills, apparently involving more than 30 countries.
A coalition of wills. Sounds a bit less formal than a treaty.
It does. And Bloomberg reported that this package, whatever it looks like, could even be finalized this week.
This week, wow, that's fast.
It is moving quickly, and the scope of what's being proposed is pretty significant. There's talk of British and French troops potentially being sent to Ukraine.
Troops on the ground.
Potentially, along with contingents from maybe 10 other countries. It marks a real potential shift in the West's commitment level.
That feels huge.
It is, because this isn't just about protecting Ukraine anymore, is it? It feels like it's about reshaping the whole European security architecture, maybe establishing a kind of tripwire outside formal NATO structures to deter future aggression. It suggests a much longer-term strategy, way beyond just immediate ceasefire terms.
Wow. But, I mean, what are the risks there? Could it be seen as overcommitment? Or maybe it alienates other powers, like creating a sort of mini-NATO without the actual treaty?
That's a really crucial question. And the lack of formal NATO structures, well, that could be both a strength and a weakness, you know? Flexibility is the strength. It lets a broader coalition form, perhaps, without the unanimity rules NATO has. But the weakness, well, the commitments might not feel as legally binding or maybe not as robust if a real crisis hits. And yeah, the risk of alienating powers like China or even some non-aligned nations, that's definitely a factor. They might see it as more Western expansion or interventionism.
Yeah, tricky balance. And just to throw another layer on this, Donald Trump apparently weighed in on Fox News.
Oh, what did he say?
He said Washington could provide air support as part of these guarantees.
Okay, air support.
But absolutely ruled out sending any U.S. ground troops. So a very clear line from him.
Right. Air power, yes. Boots on the ground, no. That's consistent with his usual stance, I suppose.
Okay, let's pivot now. Completely different but equally critical aspect of modern warfare. The future of military tech.
Ah, yes. Drones.
Drones. I think nobody doubts their importance now, especially maritime drones. Ukraine has really proven that, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And inspired precisely by that impact, the U.S. is, racing to build its own fleet of autonomous boats.
Autonomous, so driverless.
Essentially, yeah. But this race, well, it's hitting some serious snags. Pretty embarrassing ones, actually.
Oh, like what?
Well, during a recent U.S. naval test off California, this was supposed to be a big showcase, right? Top autonomous drone boats.
Okay.
One boat just stopped, software failure. And then, get this, another drone boat from a rival company crashed right into its side, jumped over the deck and fell back into the water.
No way. Seriously.
Seriously, this incident wasn't previously disclosed, but it was caught on video. The boats were built by companies called Saronic and Black Sea Technologies.
That sounds chaotic. Was that a one-off?
Not at all. Apparently, weeks before that, in another Navy test, an autonomous boat from Black Sea Technologies, the same company, was being towed. Suddenly, it just accelerated, flipped the support boat towing it, and threw the captain into the water.
Oh my goodness. Was he okay?
Yeah, thankfully, he was rescued, didn't need medical attention, but still. Sources familiar with both incidents say it was a mix of software failures and human error.
Wow. And nobody's commenting officially?
Nope. The Navy, Saronic, Black Sea Technologies all declined to comment, which, tells you something about how sensitive this is.
So, okay, the strategic reason for the U.S. military seems clear. They see the impact of Ukrainian drones. They want something similar, maybe even better, possibly to counter China in the Taiwan Strait, right? Air and sea swarms.
That's the idea, countering a potential Chinese
But
advance.
given these failures, I mean, how realistic is this ambition right now? Are they pushing the tech too fast, or is this just, the messy reality of developing something brand new?
That's a fantastic question, and it really highlights the huge leap the U.S. is trying to make here. Look at the Ukrainian drones. They're incredibly effective, no doubt.
Right.
But they're mostly remote controlled. They often look like, speedboats without seats. They carry weapons, explosives, cost maybe $250,000 each. And they've been devastating in those kamikaze missions against Russia's Black Sea Fleet.
One-way trips, basically.
Exactly, ramming speed.
Hmm.
But the U.S. autonomous fleet, what they're aiming for is way more ambitious. They want swarming behavior without constant human command.
So the boats coordinate themselves.
That's the goal. And that's a much, much higher bar technologically. These boats cost millions of dollars per boat. So these test failures, they really expose the bleeding edge of that ambition. It is the messy, difficult reality of trying to push technology maybe beyond its current limits.
It sounds like the problems aren't just technical glitches either.
Yeah.
They're personnel issues, too.
Yeah.
Like the chief admiral for these drone units
Yeah.
getting dismissed.
Yeah, that signals a pretty significant loss of confidence, right, at high levels. The Pentagon's Defense Innovation Unit, the DIU, they've indefinitely suspended a nearly $20 million contract with Altria AI. That's one of the software suppliers involved. And remember, the Pentagon launched this massive $1 billion replicator program just last year, specifically to get thousands of these drones quickly.
$1 billion.
Yeah. But now, the Navy's whole approach is facing skepticism from what sources call a new administration within the Pentagon. A senior official apparently suggested the program might be duplicating other efforts, hinting that changes are coming.
So the whole unit might be shaken up.
It's under review, yeah. Could be restructured, maybe even closed down. And this is happening just 2 months after its leader, Rear Admiral Kevin Smith, was dismissed for loss of confidence. It's a clear sign the Navy is under massive pressure to adapt and maybe not succeeding smoothly just yet.
It really sounds like they're being pushed into totally new territory. I saw a quote from T.X. Hams. He's an expert on autonomous weapons.
Hims knows his stuff.
He said, "The Navy is in completely uncharted waters, trying to reform decades of tradition at high speed." He mentioned they're used to building big things, taking years to make a decision, and suddenly you're asking them to move very fast.
That nails it, doesn't it?
It really does. Sums up the challenge perfectly.
Absolutely. It captures that tension. You've got these deeply entrenched ways of doing things, big institutions, precision, long development cycles for huge, expensive ships.
Right. Aircraft carriers, submarines.
Exactly. And now they're being forced to embrace this completely different way of thinking. Distributed systems, fast-moving, sometimes even disposable tech. That cultural shift, it's probably just as challenging as the technical hurdles.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. Okay, so we've covered military strategy, cutting-edge tech, but conflicts always have a profound human cost.
Always.
And sometimes it's those individual voices that offer the most surprising, maybe hopeful paths forward. Which brings us to a really moving story from Turkey, a long-standing conflict there.
Yeah, this is quite a powerful development. We're seeing mothers of fighters from the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK.
Right.
They've come forward actually requesting amnesty for their sons and just pleading for an end to decades of fighting and death.
Where did they make this plea?
Before a Turkish parliamentary commission, believe it or not, a commission specifically set up to oversee the group's disarmament.
Wow. That takes incredible courage.
It really does. In such a highly charged political environment, it's quite remarkable.
It sounds heartbreaking, but also kind of hopeful at the same time. One of the mothers shared a quote with the legislators. It's really powerful.
What did she say?
She said, "We mothers don't want to cry anymore." And then she continued, "Let's bury the weapons, not our children. If they come down from the mountains only to be condemned to life in prison, how can we persuade others to burn their weapons?"
Wow. That's incredibly direct and poignant. It really cuts right to the core of the dilemma, doesn't it?
It really does.
And this plea, it's part of a bigger effort by this commission. It's actually dubbed the National Solidarity, Fraternity, and Democracy Commission. Quite a name. And the aim, officially, is to establish a lasting peace, one that they hope would also have positive effects in neighboring Syria. And, just for context, this conflict between the Turkish state and the PKK, it's killed over 40,000 people over 4 decades.
40,000. Staggering.
It is, and the PKK itself is labeled a terrorist group by Turkey, by the EU, by the United States. So for these mothers to speak out like this and for this parliamentary commission to even exist, well, it represents a significant, even if maybe fragile, opening for dialogue in a conflict that's just caused immense suffering for so long.
A glimmer of hope.
Maybe. A very human one.
Wow. What a deep dive today. Seriously. We've journeyed from the shifting front lines and that complex diplomacy in Ukraine.
Right. The guarantees Lavrov's reaction.
To the cutting edge, sometimes, well, chaotic world of autonomous naval drones.
Yeah, the crashes and the program reviews.
And then finally to this deeply personal, really poignant plea for peace coming out of Turkey.
We really hope this whole exploration has given you, our listeners, a clearer, maybe more nuanced understanding of these complex global threads, helping you gain that knowledge quickly, but also thoroughly.
Yeah, and hopefully providing some of those aha moments you're always looking for when you tune in.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you? As we watch conflicts evolve, technology race ahead, and these calls for peace echo across the globe. It raises a pretty big question, I think. When the geopolitical landscape is constantly shifting like this and innovation is challenging tradition so fundamentally, where does true security really lie? Is it in the most cutting-edge technology? Is it in carefully crafted diplomatic agreements? Or is it ultimately somewhere deeper in that fundamental human desire for peace?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.